You kneel beside a shallow pool and see your face trembling in the water. No tap waits nearby. No filter hangs from your belt. Antelope tracks end at one bank, while a green film curls around the other. You need to drink, but which mouthful keeps you alive? For roughly 300,000 years, every generation of Homo sapiens faced some version of that decision. The easy answer is that your ancestors drank filthy water and evolved iron stomachs. That answer is comforting, dramatic, and wrong. Many ancient water sources were not filthy, and no human stomach became immune to every parasite or pathogen. So how did your ancestors survive without water that had been tested, treated, and piped to them? Start with your body. Water carries nutrients, cools your skin, maintains blood volume, and allows every cell to keep functioning. Lose too much and thirst becomes weakness, confusion, organ failure, then death. In heat, that sequence can move frighteningly fast. Why would evolution leave such a vulnerable animal on an open savanna? It did not remove the vulnerability. It made the water budget tighter. In 2021, evolutionary anthropologist Herman Pontzer and his colleagues compared daily water turnover in 5 diverse human populations with water turnover in chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans. Water turnover means all the water entering and leaving a body each day, measured with harmless trackable forms of hydrogen and oxygen. What did those chemical tracers reveal? After accounting for body size, climate, activity, and calories burned, human water turnover was roughly 30 to 50% lower than in the other apes. That is remarkable because your body has an extraordinary ability to sweat. Sweat lets you dump heat while walking and running in the sun, but every cooling drop is also a loss. Your body is more water efficient than an ape's, not waterproof like a canteen. How much freedom could even a small saving create? It could let your ancestors travel farther between dependable sources. It could create more time to search, hunt, gather, or move camp before dehydration forced a return. Yet physiology was only the backup system. The main survival strategy existed outside the body, in memory, movement, and a detailed reading of the landscape. Before water was a drink, it was a map. Where did that map lead? That map is far older than your species. In a 2009 study, geologist Gail Ashley and archaeologist Joanne Tacticos and R. Bernhardt Owen examined sediments and stone artifacts from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania dating to about 1.79 to 1.74 million years ago. The people there were earlier hominins, meaning members of the human evolutionary line before Homo sapiens. During dry periods, their activity shifted toward a small groundwater-fed wetland that persisted as the surrounding lake margin changed. Why keep returning to one patch of wet ground? Groundwater can remain available after seasonal pools disappear. A spring also reaches the surface after moving through layers of soil and rock, which can remove some debris and microbes, although it never guarantees safety. Ashley's team found that this spring and wetland complex stayed a focus of activity through repeated wet and dry cycles. The stone tools did not contain a written map, but their locations preserved one. What would you have needed to learn to use it? You would watch where vegetation stayed green after the rain stopped. You would notice damp sand, insect swarms, bird flights, animal paths, and the shape of valleys where water collected below ground. You would prefer water emerging near its source over a warm pool churned by hooves when both were available. You would smell, taste, and inspect it, while knowing from experience that animals, waste, or a carcass upstream could turn an attractive source into a trap. Could any visible clue guarantee safety? The group does. An elder remembers which spring lasted through a drought decades earlier. A skilled forager knows which hollow fills after a storm and which one turns foul first. Children learn routes, seasons, and taboos long before they understand why those rules matter. Shared memory becomes a survival technology that weighs nothing. What happens when the season changes the entire map? When anthropologist Richard B. Lee began fieldwork among the Ju Huansi around Dobe in 1963, he documented how water structured movement in the Kalahari. Dry season camps clustered around permanent waterholes, while seasonal rain pans allowed people to disperse across a wider area. Living hunter-gatherers are not frozen copies of Stone Age people. so their choices cannot simply be projected backward. But the comparison shows how mobility turns changing water into a schedule rather than a surprise. Would staying in one place have been safer? Often, it would have been more dangerous. A small mobile camp could leave when a source shrank, became dirty, or demanded longer daily journeys. Human waste did not accumulate for generations beside the same bank, and fewer domestic animals crowded the drinking place. Mobility could reduce exposure, but it never made natural water sterile. The freedom to leave was part of the protection. Why stay when the source itself begins turning against you? Not every drop came from a pool or spring. Fruit, tubers, fresh meat, and other foods carried water inside them. In some dry landscapes, experienced foragers could locate moisture-rich roots or seasonal melons when surface water was scarce. Food water reduced the amount that had to be carried, but it could not replace drinking indefinitely under hard travel and heat. How could your ancestors extend the distance between sources? They needed containers. That sounds ordinary until you imagine making a watertight vessel without glass, metal, or plastic. Wood can be hollowed, hides can be shaped, gourds can be dried, and bark or fiber can be sealed. But most of those materials decay before archaeologists ever find them. The archaeological record, therefore, preserves only a fraction of the equipment ancient people probably used. What survived long enough to leave a clear clue? At Deep Kloof Rock Shelter in South Africa, ostrich eggshell did. In 2010, archaeologist Pierre-Jean Texier and his colleagues reported 270 intentionally engraved fragments dating to around 60,000 years ago. Several pieces had deliberate openings, and the researchers interpreted the decorated shells as functional containers used in daily hunter-gatherer life. Later ethnographic examples show the same kind of shell being used mainly as a water flask. Why choose an egg? An ostrich eggshell is light, strong for its weight, and naturally watertight. It can hold roughly a liter, and a small opening makes it easier to close and carry without losing every drop. Engraved patterns may also have helped signal ownership or identity. Ethnographic records from southern Africa describe water-filled shells carried on foraging trips and stored in caches for dry periods, although those recent practices do not prove every ancient use. Still, what does a portable liter change? It turns water into time. You can leave a spring, cross open ground, and return with something for a child or an injured companion. You can bring water to camp instead of bringing the entire camp to the bank. You can place a reserve along a familiar route and make a dry stretch passable. A container does not clean water, but could it prevent contamination too? Sometimes. A narrow covered opening protects stored water from hands, dust, insects, and fresh waste better than an open bowl. Yet storage can also create new risks if the vessel is dirty or shared carelessly. Ancient survival depended on handling as much as collecting. The difference between a source and a safe sip continued all the way back to camp. How much safety could careful handling add? You should not picture every ancient camp routinely boiling its drinking water. Controlled fire is very old, but fire alone does not prove water purification. Boiling requires a heat-resistant vessel or a method such as dropping hot stones into a watertight hide or basket, and direct evidence for routine prehistoric boiling is scarce. Settling muddy water or passing it through sand can improve appearance without removing every microscopic threat. So was there any perfect method? There was not. Your ancestors suffered intestinal infections and parasites, sometimes repeatedly. Exposure could produce some immunity to a familiar organism, but immunity to one strain is not a magic shield against another. Diarrhea is especially dangerous because it drains the very water and salts a sick body needs, and young children are the least able to survive that loss. When a population survives, does that mean every person was safe? It means enough people lived long enough to pass on knowledge and raise another generation. The phrase "ancient humans survived" hides every child who did not, every weakened adult, and every camp forced away from a failing source. Natural selection is not kindness. It records reproduction, not comfort. What did an ordinary successful day actually look like? Picture southern Africa around 60,000 years ago, using the finds at Deep Kloof as an anchor rather than a perfect photograph. You wake before the hottest part of the day, An engraved ostrich eggshell lies near the sleeping area, its narrow opening ready to be filled. Someone older points toward a route already walked hundreds of times. Why leave so early? Cool air slows water loss. You follow low ground where greener plants suggest moisture, but you pass the broad pool marked by dense hoofprints. Farther on, clear water seeps near rock and collects in a small depression. You inspect the bank, the smell, and the ground above it for waste or a carcass. Is the water sterile? No. It is simply the lowest risk option your knowledge can find. You drink, fill the shell, and begin the return before the sun climbs higher. The vessel is precious because it carries both water and the hours spent reaching it. Back at camp, the water is shared according to need. Does that look like individual toughness or group logistics? By midday, the longest movement's slow. Shade reduces sweating, food supplies some moisture, and the next journey is planned around distance and heat. If the spring weakens, camp can move before desperation makes a bad pool look good. No laboratory has tested the SIP, and no germ theory explains the rules. Is this primitive behavior or careful risk management? The counterintuitive answer appears when people stop moving. Farming creates stored food, permanent houses, and larger communities, but it also concentrates people, livestock, feces, and refuse beside the same water sources. A stream that serves a few passing foragers faces a different burden when a village uses it every day. Settlement makes sophisticated water engineering necessary while making contamination easier. Could progress make water more dangerous and safer at the same time? About 7,000 years ago, early farmers in what is now eastern Germany built massive wooden wells. A 2012 study, led by Willy Teagle, dated oak timbers from 4 wells to between 5,469 and 5,098 BCE. Their builders shaped complex joints with stone tools, creating durable linings that reach controlled groundwater. These wells reveal planning and extraordinary carpentry, not helpless people dipping cups into random puddles. But did a well solve every problem? A well can protect access and reduce suspended dirt, yet waste seeping into groundwater can still carry disease. Drawing water with dirty hands or containers can recontaminate it at the surface. Storage near homes adds another opportunity for microbes to spread. Water technology and sanitation must work together, even when nobody can see the organisms involved. What happened as settlements grew denser? At Çatalhöyük in present-day Turkey, bioarchaeologist Clark Spencer Larson and colleagues traced health across roughly 1,200 years of Neolithic settlement. Their 2019 study found increasing exposure to disease as population density rose, and people lived closely with domesticated animals. Another 2019 team, led by Marissa Ledger, found whipworm eggs in 2 pieces of preserved human feces from the site, direct proof that intestinal parasites circulated there. Neither result makes every illness waterborne, but together they expose the biological cost of crowding. Is that the real twist behind clean water? Your mobile ancestors often avoided a water crisis by moving through a lightly populated landscape. Later communities gained wells, pottery, storage, and eventually pipes, while also creating larger contamination problems those technologies had to control. Civilization did not move in a straight line from dirty nature to clean taps. It increased both the danger and the power to manage it. When did clean water stop being a place and become a system? That system still fails. The World Health Organization reported that 2.2 billion people lack safely managed drinking water in 2022, including 115 million who collected untreated water directly from lakes, ponds, rivers, and streams. This is not a distant Stone Age problem. It is a modern problem of infrastructure, inequality, contamination, and shared responsibility. How ancient is the decision beside that pool? Every time you open a tap, an invisible chain makes the choice for you. A protected watershed, treatment plant, pipe network, pressure system, testing laboratory, and sanitation rules stand between your mouth and countless pathogens. Your glass looks simple because generations of collective knowledge have been built into it. Ancient knowledge worked on a smaller scale through roots, seasons, containers, habits, and trust. What is the oldest water technology you still depend on? It is not the filter. It is not the well. It is the ability to notice risk, remember what works, and share that knowledge before someone becomes thirsty. Your ancestors survived neither because dirty water was harmless, nor because their bodies were invincible. They survived by finding the cleanest water available, carrying it carefully, moving when necessary, and accepting that mistakes could be fatal. You kneel beside a shallow pool and see your face trembling in the water, but now the reflection contains an entire map.